Well, our guest tonight on the Record Collectors and a welcome return is Johnny Gentle. Welcome to the programme, John.
I'm pleased to be here, and I hope that we can give the audience a nice story of the days when rock and roll was really happening.
Now, tell me about your very first memory of performing on stage in Liverpool, or as George Harrison would say, all those years ago.
Yeah. My first experience was when it wasn't a rock and roll song, it was a song by Eddie Fisher. Ever since we parted, I've been downhearted. I practiced this, and my mate said, go up there to Riley's Crosby and sing it, because you'll get all the birds you want once you crack that. So I went upstage, and the pianist said to me, what key are you singing? I don't know what you mean. He says, well, you know, is it C or E? Or I said, well, I don't know, it might be the back door key, but give me a note and I'll try it. So he gave me a note, and it was, ever since we parted, I've been down hard. So I couldn't. He went much too high, and by this time, because I was known in the dance hall, because I went there every week, the girls were all keen to come and watch, and the boys and see what this is all about. But after me singing this in this key that was played about 3 octaves too high for me, they slowly drifted away and started dancing away and kissing their lovers again, and I was left there on my own singing away. But I learned from that. I learned that next time I do I'll know if the pianist says to me what key you're singing, I'll know what it is, because I'd find out. And by this time I'd made a guitar, and I'd made it during my apprenticeship, and so I took guitar lessons. So if I had a record that I liked, I knew what key it was, because I immediately picked it on my guitar. So I went to Locarno,
Oh, yes.
and I won a competition, and the dance hall leader, who was Jan Ralphini, he wanted me to. I won a 2-week stay at the Locarno with a pay, which was amazing. I think he paid me £20 a week when the wage was only about 10 at the time. And he said, would you like to stay with me as the resident band singer? But I wanted to go, by that time, I wanted to go to London and become a big name. And I said, no, thanks for the offer, I'm going down to London. And he gave me this address of his son, Ian Ralphini, who was big nose in the Pie record company. So I looked him up. He wasn't impressed, because I tried to do a couple of Cliff Richard numbers, and he said, well, we've already got a Cliff Richard. I don't think we can do anything with it. So anyway, I kept plugging away, sent a few photographs and a few records here there, and eventually got signed up by an agent. He sent my tapes to Philips Records. They signed me up, and I made about 6 records with them. Unfortunately, none of them was a hit. And then I went on, during that period, I went on tour in Scotland with the Beatles backing me. And I was always writing songs. And we've got a night off, and we're all strumming guitars. And I was playing to George and John. I don't know where Paul was, or Stuart Sutcliffe, because he was in the group at that time. I don't know where they were, but anyway, I was playing this tune to John and George, and John said, "Don't like that middle eight. I've got a bit here, that song that I've got in my mind, which would maybe fit in there." And he played this middle eight to me, and it just fell in to the song that I'd written. So I scrubbed the middle eight that I'd done, and I used his. He never got any credit for it. He never came back to me saying, you know, you recorded that middle eight of mine and you never give me any credit. Because he'd gone on to bigger things then, so he probably wasn't bothered anyway. But you in those days you didn't, because you could be sitting with mates of yours and he'd play you a song, and then you'd say to him, well, how about this little bit? Often I'd given Gordon Mills, who manages Tom Jones and Engelbert, and he used to write songs. Prior to him becoming big by managing Tom Jones, we used to do songs together. And he used to come to me and say, John, I've just written this, so what do you think? And I said, yeah, okay, but this, I've got a little bit that might fit it, and blah, blah, blah. So I'd give him a throwaway little line, and it would fit in with the song that he got published and made a few bob out of it. So
you remember the track that you recorded for our listener? Just did we tell us the track that John helped write with you? It was called.
Yeah, after this, I recorded this song, two tracks. I just finished with Philips, and EMI signed me up. So on the Parlophone record, they advised me to change my name to away from Johnny Gentle, because it had 6 records that had not done a lot. So they thought if they changed my name, like Engelbert changed it from Jerry Dorsey, if I changed it to something, what you like? I said, well, okay, Darren Young. Right, you're Darren Young from now on. So we done these 2 songs under the name of Darren Young on Parlophone. It was called, the one that John Lennon helped me to write was called I've Just Fallen for Someone. That was the B-side. The A-side was My Tears Will Turn to Laughter. But there's been more interest in the B-side because of the John Lennon connection. And they're now, it's been re-released on because when I recorded it under the name of Darren Young, John Barry backed me. He done the arrangement. And John Barry, as you know, he's backed many singers before he became a big film soundtrack man. And he's just got a CD out now, the hits and the misses of all the records that he's recorded or he arranged for all the artists. Some were big, as the record says, the hits and misses was Adam Faith, obviously were hits, and then other artists that didn't quite make it. But he picked out the best 50 that he thought was worthy of putting on this album. So it's out. It's by Darren Young on John Barry's The Hits and the Misses, and the 2 tracks that I done was My Tears Will Turn to Laughter and I've Just Fallen for Someone. And you can go and get in the shops now. And as I say, for John Barry or his management to think it worthy of dragging it out from all those years ago and put it on an album now, it must be a, you know.
Do you have any other memories of that Scottish tour? Because now, I mean, you were connected to 2 legendary tours, the infamous last Eddie Cochran tour, and of course the first real British tour of the Beatles. But just concluding the Beatle period, have you any other memories of, because of rubbing shoulders with the boys all those years? Yeah, with the Beatles.
Yeah, we turned up. I turned up at the gig, the first gig that we were supposed to do, and they made their way from Lime Street in Liverpool on the train with all their amplifiers, and mind you, it wasn't much in those days. You only had a little lamp and a guitar, you know, it wasn't like they had these days. And we met at our first gig about half an hour before we were due on, or about an hour before we were due on. And because either I was late or they were late. So we had a quick run through. But they'd already been sent a repertoire of the songs that I will probably likely to sing. get practicing, boys, you know. You practice them because that's what you might be doing.
How good were they?
Um,
Honestly.
honestly, well, they was as good as any of the bands that backed me in those days because, you know, there was very few great rock bands at that time in England that could compare with the rockers. We're talking about Eddie Cochran and you know.
On the subject of Eddie Cochran, and because I'm meeting you at the, just tell our listener, I'm at the Eddie Cochran Rock and Roll weekend. It's a commemoration of the death of Eddie Cochran. You've got a story to tell about the last tour, haven't you, about Eddie?
Yeah. It's sad. I was not actually officially on that particular night's bill. I got a phone call. I was in London. I got a phone call from the manager saying someone's taken ill. I don't know who it was. Some say it was Billy Fury. Some say it was a fella called Dean Webb. But I don't think Dean Webb was even on the bill. So I don't know. All I know is that there was someone who was ill. They needed someone to fill the spot. The agent knew that I was free that night, so he phoned me up and he said, get to Bristol, there's a free spot, fill in on the Eddie Cochran show, which I did do, which went well. And then after the show, Eddie was to go to the States that night or that morning, and he said to me, I was walking. After the show was finished, I walked past his dressing room and he opened the door and he said, "Oh, Johnny," he said, "I believe you got your car." I said, "I believe you got your car." I said, "Yeah," because they were on the coach doing the tour. So he said, "Any chance of a lift back to Heathrow? Because we're catching the plane back to the States." Well, unfortunately, I had Peter Wynn in the car, my girlfriend, Peter Wynn's girlfriend, so we had 4 in the car. And it could have fit 6 with a squeeze, but it would have meant Eddie, Shelley, Sharon Shearley, and Gene Vincent, and their luggage. So I just say, "I'm sorry, Eddie. You know, I can't. I can't. I'd love to give you a lift, but I can't make it." So he said, "Don't worry, John." He said, he's such a gentleman. He said, "Don't worry, John." He said, "I'll get a hire car, and you know, we'll make our own way." So that was it. I remember the hire car pulling up to the stage door, and Eddie jumping in with his gear, and Sharon Shearley and Gene Vincent jumping in, and off they went. I wasn't quite ready to go my way. So then we're on our way to London now, and I'm running low of petrol because I didn't fill up before I left Bristol. And we happened to see a policeman walking the beat. They did in those days. We walked the beat, and I said, do you know where there's a petrol station? Because every petrol station we passed, it was lights out. Anywhere we can get petrol? He said, "No," but he said, "There's been an accident round a corner there. If you go around there, the breakdown van might be able to give you some petrol." So we drove around the corner. The breakdown van was there. This car that we didn't recognise as Eddie's hire car was turned over on the verge, and the breakaway, the ambulance was just pulling away with bodies in it, which we didn't know about. Anyway, I said to the driver of the breakdown truck, "Any chance of petrol, mate? We've run out." He says, "Well, no, we've got none on board." He said, "We usually carry some on board, but we've got none. But that wreck there must have some in it. If you want to siphon the petrol from there, you're welcome to." He said, "And I've got a bit of tube if you want to do it." So we went and siphoned the petrol from this wreck. More or less filled our tank up enough to get back to London. When we got back to London, the manager phoned us and said Eddie has been in a fatal accident with Gene and Sharon, and he's in a serious situation.
Did it dawn on you then that it was Chippenham or just outside Chippenham where you got the petrol?
The pennies started to drop. So the next thing, we're all ready to dive into our cars and go to the hospital to see Eddie. But then we got another phone call even before we left home and saying he's died. You know, he never made it. So he never made it. But we made London on the petrol that was in his car, and and I often wonder, you know, if I'd have given him a lift,
What would have happened?
what would have happened?
What I want to say to our listener, because the clock's beating us, John, is that the book, your autobiography is out, and it's called...
Yeah, it's called Johnny Gentle and the Beatles' First Tour of Scotland by Ian Forsyth and Johnny Gentle. You can get it from Mersey Rock Publications or the Amazon website.